February 5th, 1988. One of the most historic shows in WWE history. This was the first edition of the main event, which was not a show on Ion Television like it is now with a bunch of jobber matches. This was a live special on NBC, featured the WrestleMania 3 rematch between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant for the WWE Championship. Still the greatest number of viewers to watch pro wrestling on network television. 33 million people. I can't even wrap my head around that number. 33 million people tuned in to watch at least parts of that match. Also, it was the first appearance of the new Winged Eagle Championship belt that is still to this day my favorite pro wrestling title of all time. And I know many of yours as well. Interestingly, in the pre-match backstage promo with Hogan, because on these specials back in the day, like Saturday Night's Main Event and all that, a wrestler would make his entrance, and then Vince McMahon on commentary would throw it back to Mean Gene in the locker room. They'd interview his opponent, then the opponent would come out. So they go to a backstage promo. I think this was after Andre was already in the ring, and Hogan's back there with Mean Gene. He's still wearing the old 1986 Hogan championship belt, which was smaller. But when he came out for the match, like magic, the Winged Eagle appeared around his waist. It always sticks out in my mind. It was so obvious those promos were pre-taped many, many hours earlier in the day, probably. But why nobody thought, okay, he's wearing the 86 belt in the promo, but he's coming out with this brand new title belt. That's a little weird. So anyway, that was a historic match. I mean, again, this was the match where they did the evil twin Hebner angle. It's also the only championship reign that Andre the Giant ever had, which was brief. It was uneventful, but at least he could, people can say Andre was the champion at some point. This was Earl Hebner's debut in WWE. His brother Dave was already a referee. Earl was working for the NWA. They poached him over from the NWA. And the way they did this was great. I mean, it was a great angle. It really, really was. Because certainly when Earl came out to officiate the match, nobody knew the difference. You'd have to really know the Hebners to be able to tell one from the other. And watching on television, I'm sure most, or in the building, because you're not that close to the ring, nobody knew the difference. Dave was always a little bit heavier than Earl. But the storyline is that before the match, Earl, I guess, I don't know, he tied him up and put him in the stationery closet. I don't know what he did to Dave. But Earl officiated the match. Earl was paid off by the $1 Million Man. When Andre got Hogan down and went to pin him, Hogan got his shoulder up at the count of 2, maybe even the count of 1, and the referee just ignored it, and he counted 3. Referee's decision is final. Title changed hands. Hulk Hogan's 4-year championship run, done. Over. And that's when Dave came out, and there's the image of Hogan looking at these 2 referees. It's like they're looking in the mirror. Hogan doesn't understand what's going on. He can't believe it. And then came that classic promo after the match where Hulk is in the back crying like a little bitch. Oh, my God. Hogan is just crying. He's just hysterical. And he's yelling, how much for the plastic surgery, Mean Gene? When I turned around, they were identical. And it's just like, it's that classic Hogan promo where if you hate Hulk Hogan, you love that promo because this guy, he lost everything. He lost his belt. He lost the match. And now you get to watch him cry about it. And the storyline going into the match was that Ted DiBiase had said he was going to buy the championship. And Hogan wouldn't sell. He said, no way. So Andre wins it, and immediately he relinquishes it to DiBiase. And that's another funny thing, because if you go back and watch it, when Andre surrenders the belt to DiBiase, not once, but twice, he refers to it as the tag team title. I still don't know what the hell that was all about. So he surrenders the tag team title to Ted DiBiase, and they even had, he was announced as the champion, DiBiase was, at a pair of house shows after this. Before Jack Tunney went on television, he declared the title vacant. That led to the WrestleMania 4 tournament that the Macho Man won. So there, if you were one of those people to go to those house shows immediately after this, you had the rare sight of Ted DiBiase wearing the title and being introduced as the champion. Now, this show wasn't only historic because of the title change and the twin Hebner angle and all that.